uncle announced he was selling our family home the second I handed him the keys. Then he got humiliated in front of the buyer. Uncle Dennis had not set foot in my grandmother's house in years, not until the week after her funeral, and then he walked in like he already held the keys to the place. As the oldest, he announced to the whole family, I will be handling the estate, which mostly meant deciding who got what, and making sure the biggest piece landed in his lap. The biggest piece was the house. It happened to be the house I had lived in for the last 3 years, the one I moved into when Grandma got sick so I could cook for her and drive her to her appointments and sleep down the hall in case she needed me at night. Dennis had shown up for none of that. He mailed a card once. Now that there was finally something worth money sitting here, he was suddenly very present and very much in charge. This place is worth a small fortune now, he told his wife in the kitchen, plenty loud enough for me to hear from the next room. We sell it, we split it, and the kid finds herself somewhere else to crash. Mom always meant for this house to be split between her children. She just never got around to the paperwork. What Dennis never thought to do was actually look at the paperwork, because if he had, he would have learned the one thing that mattered, which is that Grandma had gotten around to it years before. Within a month, Dennis had himself a buyer, some man named Mr. Doyle who wanted to flip the place, and the two of them spent a whole afternoon walking my grandmother's rooms with a tape measure while I stood in the doorway like a guest in my own home. June, Dennis said, not bothering to look at me. We close on Friday. Bring the house keys to the title office, sign where they tell you, and be packed and gone by the weekend. When I tried to tell him the house was in my name, that I had the deed in a drawer upstairs, Dennis cut me off with a wave of his hand. You are 19 years old. At your age, you do not get a vote in grown-up estate business, and you do not get to invent some little story because you are scared to move out. I already shook the man's hand. Do not make this difficult. So I stopped explaining. I let him believe he had already won. On Friday, I brought the keys to the title office exactly the way he told me to, and I brought the deed too, folded up in the bottom of my bag, and I did not say a single word about it. The title office was a small room with one long table, and Dennis had set himself up at the head of it like he was running a board meeting. Mr. Doyle sat across from me with his checkbook out and a folder of renovation plans, already picturing the place as his. The closing agent was a woman named Ms. Okafor, and she came in with a stack of documents and started doing the thing she always did before a sale, which was confirm who actually owned the property she was about to transfer. She typed for a moment, looked at her screen, and then glanced up with a small frown. I am sorry, she said, but before we go any further, I have to clear something up. The county records show this property is owned outright by June, with the deed recorded a little over 2 years ago. Dennis brushed that off with a wave. Right, she has been staying there, but I am the executor. I am handling the sale. Ms. Okafor shook her head. This is not an estate sale, sir. The house never went into the estate at all, because your mother signed it over to June while she was still living. It is not part of anything you are executor of. Legally, it is simply June's house. To sell a house, the owner has to be the one selling it, and the owner is sitting right across the table from you. You cannot list, transfer, or close on a home that is not yours, and this one has not been yours for a single day. Dennis's face went a deep, ugly red. Then she signs it over to me right now and we proceed as planned, he snapped. Ms. Okafor set her pen down on the table. She turned to me, calm and even. Is any of this something you want to do, June? I reached into my bag, laid Grandma's deed flat on the table next to Ms. Okafor's papers, and gave him one word. No. Mr. Doyle was already gathering up his folder, color in his face, the renovation plans going back into his briefcase one sheet at a time. You told me this was a clean sale, he said to Dennis, getting to his feet. I cleared my afternoon for this. He looked at me almost apologetically, then back at Dennis with something colder. I do not do business with people who do not own what they are selling. He walked out of the title office without shaking anybody's hand. Dennis turned on me and screamed that fine. I could keep my little house, but I would keep it alone, because now the whole family would know I had let Grandma cut them out and said nothing. It took less than 48 hours for him to make good on that. My phone started going off on Sunday morning, and it did not stop. Cousins I had not heard from in months were texting me. An aunt who barely even knew Grandma Jalea sent me a message that just said, "That is so wrong, June." I did not know what version of the story they were getting until my own mother called that afternoon. The first thing out of her mouth was, "Dennis told me you forged something with Grandma's name on it. Tell me that is not true." I tried to tell her what happened, that Grandma signed the deed over to me 2 years ago, that it was recorded with the county, that the closing agent confirmed it in front of Dennis and the buyer. I got maybe 2 sentences in before she cut me off. Your grandmother would never cut her own children out. You need to make this right before it tears us apart. Then she hung up. Dennis had not just told the family I had the deed. He had told them I tricked Grandma Jalea into signing it. He had turned the whole thing into a story about a teenager taking advantage of a sick old woman, and because most of the family had not been around during those last years, they had no reason not to believe him. The next day, I got a text from Funmi, Dennis's wife. It read less like a family member reaching out, and more like a warning shot. She wrote that the family was exploring all options to make sure Grandma Jalea's estate was handled the way she truly intended. She said that if I did not agree to sell and split the money money fairly, Dennis was prepared to take me to court and contest the deed. Then she added, "The legal fees alone will eat up everything this house is worth. You are young. Be smart about this." I read that last line 3 times. Be smart about this. Like keeping my own home was the dumb choice. I put my phone down on the kitchen table, Grandma Jalea's kitchen table, and I just sat there. Part of me, and I am not proud of this, started thinking maybe I should just sell. I was 19. I did not have money for a lawyer. I did not have the energy to fight my entire family by myself. For about 10 minutes, I sat there seriously thinking about calling Dennis and telling him fine, we could work something out, just to make the noise stop. Then I opened the drawer. It was the same drawer where Grandma Jalea kept all her important papers, the one where I had found the deed months ago. I think I just wanted to touch something that was hers, to feel close to her for a second. I pulled the drawer open and moved a few folders around, and that is when I saw it. There was a white envelope tucked behind where the deed had been, pressed flat against the back of the drawer like it had been placed there on purpose. My name was written on the front in Grandma Jalea's handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands and unfolded a single sheet of paper. The first line read, "June, if you are reading this, then I am gone and someone in this family is giving you trouble about this house." I had to press my hand over my mouth because it felt like she was sitting right next to me. She knew. She knew this would happen. The letter was not long, maybe half a page. She explained that she had put the house in my name on purpose, not by accident, because she knew exactly what would happen when she was gone. She wrote, "I did not leave it to my children because none of them earned it. You moved your whole life in here for me. That is not a trick. That is love. Do not let anyone tell you different." I sat there crying so hard I could barely see the paper. Grandma Jalea had known Dennis would come for this house. She had left me this letter like a hand on my shoulder from wherever she was, telling me to stand up straight and stop apologizing. I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the drawer, and deleted the draft text I had started typing to Dennis. I was done being quiet. If the family wanted to hear about Grandma Jalea's house, they were going to hear it from me, in her living room, in her words. I called every single person who had been blowing up my phone that week and said the same thing. If everybody has so much to say about Grandma's house, then come say it to my face in Grandma's living room. Saturday, 2 o'clock. I did not tell any of them what I was going to do. Eliana texted me Thursday night, my cousin, the one other person who had actually come around during those years. She said Dennis had called her mother and crowed in front of everyone. She is finally coming to her senses. We will have this wrapped up by the weekend. He thought I was calling the meeting to surrender. He had no idea what was waiting for him. Saturday came and I printed the county records nice and clean, 3 copies. I had the deed in a folder, and I had Grandma Jalea's letter in my back pocket, folded tight like a prayer. Dennis showed up 40 minutes early with Funmi behind him, walked straight past me without a word, and sat down in Grandma Jalea's chair. Not the couch, not one of the folding chairs I had set up. Grandma's chair, the big one with the green cushion that still smelled like her lotion. He sat in it like a throne. My mother showed up right at 2, crossed her arms, and sat in the chair closest to the door like she wanted to be able to leave fast. An aunt and 2 cousins filled the couch. Eliana came in last and found a spot in the back corner by the bookshelf. She gave me one small nod when our eyes met, and that was it. Every single person in that room except maybe Eliana was looking at me like I was about to apologize and make this whole thing go away. Dennis let the silence sit, enjoying it, then leaned forward in Grandma's chair. "I am glad you came around. The smartest thing you can do is let the adults handle this. We sell, we split, everyone is taken care of, we move on as a family." I let him finish. Then I stood up. I did not yell. I did not cry. I just stood up and said, "I did not call this meeting to give in. I called it because every single one of you has been talking about me for 2 weeks, and not one of you asked me what actually happened." Nobody moved. I pulled the deed out of the folder and held it up. "This is the deed to this house. Grandma Jalea signed it over to me 2 years ago. It is recorded with the county. It is legal." I set it on the coffee table. Then I pulled out the printed county records. These are the records from the county office, the same ones the closing agent pulled up when Dennis tried to sell this house out from under me. Then I reached into my back pocket and pulled out the letter. This is a letter Grandma Jalea wrote to me. She left it in the drawer with the deed. I am going to read it to you, because these are her words and not mine. I read it out loud, start to finish. When I got to the line that said, "I did not leave it to my children because none of them earned it. You moved your whole life in here for me. That is not a trick. That is love. Do not let anyone tell you different." The whole room went still. My mother put her hand over her mouth. A cousin in the back leaned forward and nodded slowly. Dennis did not say a word. Then Dennis stood up. He stood up so fast Grandma's chair rocked back against the wall. "That letter does not mean anything. She could have written that on any day in any state of mind. You moved in here and turned her against her own son." He turned to the rest of the room. "I am contesting this. I have already spoken with someone and we are taking this to court. If any of you have a spine, you will back me up. The room split right down the middle, and not in my favor. The aunt looked at her hands. The cousins suddenly could not make eye contact. My mother pressed her lips together, stood up, and walked toward the door without saying a single word to me. People started leaving one by one, real quiet, like they were trying to slip out without being noticed. Dennis walked out with Funmi at his side, and a look on his face like he had just won. Within 10 minutes, the living room was empty except for me and the folding chairs. I remember thinking, I did everything right, and it still was not enough. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Eliana had not left. She walked straight over to me, and the look on her face was not pity, it was something harder. I was there when Grandma signed that deed, she said. I drove her to the office. I sat in the waiting room while she did it. If he takes this to court, I will tell them exactly what I saw. Dennis never filed anything with any court. What I got instead was worse in a different way. 3 days after the meeting, I came home from work and something felt off the second I walked in. The house was too quiet, but not the normal kind of quiet. Grandma Jalia's photo albums were gone from the shelf by the TV. 3 thick books with brown leather covers, gone like they had never been there. Her jewelry box was missing from the dresser. It was costume pieces mostly, nothing valuable. But Grandma had a story for every ring and every earring, and the little square of dust where the box had sat was still there on the wood. The quilt she had spent 2 years making, the one folded over the arm of her chair, not there. I walked to the back door and saw it. The lock was scratched and bent in a way I recognized because Dennis had showed my cousin how to pop that same lock years ago at a barbecue. He had broken into my house while I was at work. That evening my phone buzzed with a text from Dennis. These belong to my mother, not to you. You want to keep the house? Fine. But everything inside it that was hers comes to her real family. I sat there gripping my phone so tight my hand hurt, and then I did something Dennis was not ready for. I looked up locksmiths. I called the first one who could come out that night, and by 9 o'clock every lock on that house was brand new, with a new deadbolt on the back door. Then I called the police. I sat at the kitchen table and showed the officer the deed, Dennis's text admitting he took the items, and the messed up back door. The officer wrote it all down. You are the legal homeowner and you did not give him permission to enter. What he did is trespassing, and taking the items is theft. If you want to press charges, you can. I told him I was not ready to press charges yet, but I wanted the report on file. Dennis found out about the police report fast. He called me that night, louder than I had ever heard him. You called the police on your own uncle? On your grandmother's son? Over some photo albums? I kept my voice flat and even, the way Ms. Okafor had at the title office. You broke into my house and took things that were not yours. If you want to talk about what Grandma would think, you should ask yourself what she would think about that. The line went quiet. Then he hung up. The next morning, Eliana called me early. The police report had changed things. My mother had called her the night before, late, and asked for the full story, the real one. Eliana told her she had driven Grandma to the office herself the day she signed the deed, that Grandma was sharp and clear, that she had even cracked a joke about the pen being too fancy for a woman who used to write grocery lists on napkins. Then Eliana told her the part that mattered most. Grandma Jalia had specifically told her not to let Dennis find out about the deed until after she was gone. Her exact words, Eliana said to me, were, he will make it ugly. But my mother had gone quiet on the phone when she heard that. Then she asked the question I had been wanting someone to ask. Why did nobody tell me any of this? Eliana said, because Jalia asked us not to. She wanted to protect you from having to choose sides while she was still alive. The next evening I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked through the front window and saw my mother sitting behind the wheel, alone, just sitting there for a long minute before she turned the engine off. She came up the front steps and stood in the doorway without knocking, even though the door was open. Her eyes were puffy and she was not wearing any makeup, which she never does when she goes anywhere, and she stood there for a long moment before she said, I owe you an apology. I believed Dennis because he is my brother, and because it was easier than believing my own mother looked at her children and decided we did not deserve this house. We sat at the kitchen table, and for the first time since the funeral my mother looked at me like she actually wanted to hear what I had to say. Tell me what it was like, those 3 years. Tell me what it was really like. So I told her. I told her about the 2 in the morning trips to the bathroom, how I would hear Grandma call my name through the wall. I told her about the medication schedule on the fridge, 4 different pills at 4 different times. I told her about the nights when Grandma could not sleep, and we would sit in the same kitchen, and she would tell me stories about my grandfather until the sun came up. My mother listened to all of it. When I was done, she was quiet for a few seconds, and then she said, she was right to give it to you. That night, after she left, I was washing the glasses we had used when my phone buzzed. A text from my mother that just said, I called Dennis. Dennis. I found out later what she told him. You were not there. Not once. Mom made her choice, and she made it clear, and I am done pretending she did not know what she was doing. Dennis lost it. He told her grandma was manipulated, that I poisoned her mind, and then my mother said something that stopped him cold. Dennis, she wrote you a letter too. Did you know that? He went silent. I did not know about it either. My mother called me right after and explained that Eliana had mentioned grandma had written letters to each of her children. I went straight to the drawer, and behind some old folders I found a sealed envelope with Dennis's name on it in grandma's handwriting. I had never seen it before. I picked up my phone and called him. There is a letter here for you, from grandma. It has your name on it. It has not been opened. He was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, I will be there tomorrow. He came the next afternoon. No FundMe, no relatives, no audience, just Dennis, walking through the front door by himself for the first time since any of this started. He sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where he had once planned to sell this house out from under me, and I set the envelope in front of him. He looked at it for a while before he picked it up. Then he opened it and started reading. I just watched his face. His jaw got tight first, then his eyes went red, slow, like he was trying to fight it. He read the whole thing, folded it back into the envelope, and set it on the table. Finally, very quietly, almost like he was talking to himself, he said, she said she loved me, but she did not trust me. He looked up at me. She said I always showed up when there was something to gain and disappeared when there was something to give. She said she hoped one day I would understand why she gave the house to you and not be angry about it, but she was not going to bet her home on that hope. His voice cracked on the last part. My own mother. I did not gloat. I looked at him sitting there with her words still in his hands, and I said, Grandma did not do this to hurt you, Dennis. She did it to protect the house. There is a difference. He pushed back from the table, stood up, and walked out of the house. He did not slam the door behind him. That was the first time he had left this house quietly since the funeral. 2 weeks later, Funmi showed up on the porch with the photo albums and the jewelry box in a canvas bag, and left them on the steps without knocking. The quilt was folded on top, a little wrinkled from the bag, but otherwise the same. My mother started coming by on Sundays after that, and we would sit in the kitchen the way I used to sit with Grandma, not saying much, just being there together at the same table. Eliana came over one weekend and helped me plant new flowers in the front yard, the same kind Grandma Jalea used to grow along the walk, yellow and white in tidy rows. Dennis and I did not speak for a long time, but at a family gathering months later he walked past me and stopped just long enough to say, you were good to her. That night I locked the front door and stood in the dark hallway listening to the house settle around me.